Let me begin, since we're past time, by welcoming everybody to the session this morning. I'm going to say a few words here, and then I'll talk a little bit about the panel, our panelists, and the plan for the session. Since 2017, the UD Global Voices Symposium has served our community by presenting stimulating programs on global awareness and global engagement. This year, the symposium proudly presents Africa in Our Century, examining the growing importance of this continent for our present and for our future. I happily welcome you all to this student session entitled Perspectives on Global Education and Impact. In this session, we bring students together from the wider Dayton community to discuss their views on global education and study abroad experiences, and to suggest ways in which we might enhance global awareness on this campus and in the larger community. My name is Chris Agnew, and I serve as the chair of the Department of History at the University of Dayton, and before that, as the former director of the International Studies program. This session's focus is of particular interest to me for both personal and professional reasons. Professionally, in my time as director of the International Studies program, I saw firsthand how study abroad and global learning transformed the attitudes and outlooks of the students that I advised. International studies majors are required to have some form of global experience to graduate. Many of those students chose to participate in study abroad to fulfill that requirement. And I witnessed how these experiences changed student identities, changed student interests, and changed students' awareness about their place in the world. On a personal level, this session resonates because I remember my own experiences and how study abroad sent me down the path that brings me here. Like the students you'll hear from today, when I was a college student in the 1990s, I studied abroad. I spent a semester studying abroad in Beijing, the capital of the People's Republic of China. The experience was transformative on many levels, and also an experience full of contradictions. On the one hand, I witnessed conditions of poverty that I had never experienced up until that point. China was a developing country, developing quickly, but this was the era in the 1990s when the principal form of transportation was still the bicycle, not the car. Of course, a very different Beijing today. At the same time, coming from a small town myself, I also experienced for the first time in China, a developing country, what I might describe as urban modernity. I took my first taxi in Beijing, rode my first public bus in Beijing, took my first subway ride in Beijing, went to my first disco, saw my first police beating. And it was in this mess of contradiction that I began to reflect on myself and my own country for the first time. That is, it was only really in China that I became one of the quote unquote Americans, an identity that never really mattered to me prior to that moment. Today, we're going to hear from students with global experiences of their own. As we listen to their stories, I would like us to think about how these experiences changed their perspectives. But I'd also like us to think about what this might mean to us, hearing their experiences, and what this might mean for how we should think about changing the communities in which we live, in which we work. Let me now turn to introduce our three panelists. And I apologize in advance, one of our panelists had to pull out at the last minute. So I'll introduce him in absentia, but he will not be with us today. Our first panelist, Jamie Shackleford. Jamie is a mother of 3 vibrant children and a student at the University of Dayton on the pre-med path. She began her education at Sinclair Community College, where she had the opportunity to participate in a 3-week study abroad trip to Durban, South Africa. Upon matriculation from medical school, Jamie plans to volunteer her medical services in Africa as often as possible. Our second panelist, Kensani Ngwenya, is a 22-year-old South African who is currently on a student exchange program at Sinclair Community College. She comes from a theatrical background and is majoring in new media while in the United States. She likes to spend her spare time writing, reading, and volunteering at a nearby elementary school as a tutor, and her passions lie in anything creative and in speaking up for the helpless. I've asked each panelist to prepare a short presentation. We will proceed with each of these panelists in turn, and then follow up with questions. I hope after the presentations are over that we have an open discussion. I'd like to, in fact, hear from as many of the audience as possible. We're as much interested in our panelists' experiences as your experiences, and perhaps the panelists' presentations might inspire some participation of your own experiences and thoughts on this. So without further ado, I think we'll proceed first with Jamie Shackleford. Jamie, can I turn it over to you?
Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be here. Traveling is something I really enjoy, and so I'm excited to speak about this trip, my African experience. And like Chris said, I am 37 years old. I'm a mother of 3. I transferred from Sinclair, and now I'm a full-time student here at UD. I'm a junior on the pre-med pathway. And I did do a study abroad trip in Africa, but first I want to give you kind of an overview of my traveling experiences and how they shaped my life. I grew up in a very small town called Rochester, Indiana, and I barely had any experiences with anyone who was not a white Christian conservative farmer until I started traveling with my youth group on various mission trips in the US. And we went to places like California, Kentucky, Tennessee, Chicago. We did things like, like we worked in soup kitchens, or, in homeless shelters and various things like that. We went to a community one time and, oh, I'm sorry, one second. I apologize. I'm gonna need to switch spots. I'm so sorry for this. I will, if you want to move on, and then you can come back to me. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Will it take a long to switch? We can.
No, probably just like a couple of minutes. I'm going to turn off my camera and then I'll switch my rooms.
Okay. I think we can wait. Since you started. Apologies, everybody. I'm totally sympathetic. Having children is wonderful and challenging at the same time. So I've been in that position.
And that is also one of the key things about global awareness, the essence of flexibility, right? It's so crucial as we understand, we delve into global consciousness. Right, so yeah, and so it's okay, right? And Chris, I used the pin earlier, and I wanted you to be one. You had one controlling the pin, right?
Controlling the what?
Pin, to pin someone so that they dominate the screen.
Oh yeah, should I do that?
Well, I mean, it's your show, right? So actually, I kind of used it earlier, so let me.
I do have that power.
Exactly.
There we go.
So we have, while waiting, I know there are students from History of Modern Africa on this. The class is meeting here, and I see several of the names.
Well, that's good.
And yeah, so
one thing we might want to advertise here. This is the first session in today's lineup, but
yeah.
we have a number of other sessions today. So if I encourage you afterwards to take a look at the poster, and the keynote address is the main event. Julius, what time is the keynote for all our audience who might be interested?
In fact, we have significant at noon after this event. We have a major event coming up at 12 o'clock. Then we have another event coming up at 3. Then we have the keynote is at 7 o'clock. In fact, the noon event, again, superb speakers, researching global consciousness. I mean, we live in a global pandemic, and so we have some some significant speakers there. Then we have, again, new directions in global education coming up at 3, and then the keynote address coming up at 7 o'clock. So we have some great speakers line up, and of course, we see exactly how with this session, we see immediately the incredible amount of experience which has already been discussed right here. So I'm going to turn it back.
All right, Jamie, go ahead, take it away.
Okay, so sorry about that. So anyway, yeah, I did a lot of traveling in my youth for serving. They were serving missionary sort of experiences. And then I graduated from high school, and I went to ministry school in Charlotte, North Carolina. I was 17 at the time, and I completed my associate's degree there in Christian ministry. After graduation, I went on a trip to Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and we went speaking to churches and helping to support their communities. And then I did the same in Alabama and Georgia. And then after that point, my traveling died down. I started my family, so it was more stationary. And but then I began to travel a little bit more for fun at that point. I've been able to visit about half of the states here in the US. I've been to cruises to the Bahamas a few times, and my grandparents lived in Florida, so I traveled a ton to the Keys and Miami, but none of those experiences could compare to my study abroad trip to South Africa. And I've always had a heart for serving others. It was a driving force in my life when I was young, and it has become that again at this stage in my life. And that all happened when I was 12 years old. I received a piece of mail in my name. It was the first piece of mail I'd ever received. So it was like, how did they get my information? And I was 12, so I was just opening up to like, at that stage, you're realizing there's more than yourself in the world. And so I got this piece of mail, and the pamphlet was from Samaritan's Purse, and there were pictures of sad children with extended bellies, and it said "Support Africa" in big bold red letters. Everything in me wanted to help those children feel better. It grabbed my heart at that moment. And I don't think that sort of advertisement is necessarily appropriate, but it was my experience, and it did consume me with the idea of living in Africa and supporting communities with healthcare. So much so that I started having very vivid dreams almost every night about living there. And then in 2018, that's later, let's see, that was my kids were a little older. I was starting to realize during that period of my life that I had put a lot of my dreams and personal goals on the back burner, which is normal. And I did some really honest grappling with myself, and I decided to go back to school in the summer of 2018. I wanted to take a stab at my lifelong dream of becoming a physician. So my goal is to humanitarianly practice medicine in Africa. And I knew I had so much to learn before being able to practice as a physician, period. But at that point, I didn't understand how much I still didn't know about myself, even though I was, 30 years old. A year later, in June 2019, is when I had the privilege of studying abroad for 3 weeks in Durban, South Africa. And that was through Sinclair Community College. It was by far the most significant and life-changing trip I have ever taken. After about, I think it was 25 hours of traveling by cars and planes, I stepped out of the airport into the earthy, dense air of Durban, South Africa, and I felt like I was home. I actually started tearing up in that moment because I knew that anything I set my heart to accomplish could be accomplished. The trip became like a spiritual sojourn for me. The way I thought about myself as small and incapable of causing a real positive impact for others instantly changed in my life, in my mind. My brain now had evidence that what I wanted to accomplish in my life was a literal possibility. And the trip would unfold into many experiences that felt spiritual. I was able to stand in the spot where Nelson Mandela cast his first vote. I remember lying on my living room floor when I was 9, listening to the news report about Mandela's vote. And then to be standing there in that place was profound. After, I just feel like Africa has taught us that every voice matters and deserves a space to speak. I also had the privilege of walking through the Gandhi's home and the printing press that they funded to help educate people in their communities. And the amount of love and sacrifice and a pure stand for justice was tangible in that building. I learned their history and it became my own. I mean, it can't help but be our own. Like if the Gandhis hadn't done what they had done, what would our world be like? It is our history. And their acts of love have shaped who I want to be as a doctor and as a human. Another spiritual moment was we went to a Hare Krishna temple, and a monk spoke with us for a long time. He talked about ascension and how greater consciousness comes when we have peace in the lower levels, and then we can ascend and have peace and stability, and then we can ascend even more. And then later in that trip, I was privileged to join my host family in their Bible study. It was pretty much like being at my home church. It was amazing. And then on the plane ride home, this is like one of my favorite parts about my trip, was that on the plane ride home from Durban to Dubai, I sat next to a woman who didn't speak any English, and I couldn't tell if she was speaking Nepali or Mithili or something else. It wouldn't have mattered because I don't speak anything else but English, but she was the kindest woman in the world. She was so sweet. And it was just very simple. I helped her connect her headphones to her screen in front of her. And even though we couldn't understand each other necessarily, we shared, a common respect and it was the first time I've ever communicated with somebody, not using words, but using my heart. And that was a profound moment for me to realize that that could even be done. I never thought of communicating without communicating. And yet here we were making a bond without words. It was amazing. And then the gentleman next to me on the other side of me, he was a Muslim, and he was on his pilgrimage with his wife. He asked me, he was like, so how do you know her? And I was like, I don't know her at all. Like he was shocked because it was so obvious that we had a connection, and then, and we were very comfortable with each other. And then the gentleman began to tell me about his pilgrimage and how he had saved to go with his wife, his once in a lifetime pilgrimage. And that's just profound in itself too, like people, it gives you a different perspective of like, there are so many people out there who are just trying to live the best life that they can, and they work hard towards it. And you don't really think of that too much when you're in your own daily grind, doing your own thing. You get caught up in your own situations. But one thing that gentleman said to me was, he said, unless we see people as good, then they will never be good. And it's a very simple statement, but it's really profound because it calls us to be responsible for each other. And I think about that conversation a lot and try to apply that in my life, seeing people as good. So, it was an amazing trip. It was only 3 weeks, but it carved out a different path for my life just in those 3 weeks. Actually, in a very short amount of time, I could feel that I was beginning to be I had a different way of moving about my life by the experiences I was having with other people. And then from thereafter, my educational goals were no longer just goals. They had become solidified destinations. It was like the difference of imagining that I was going to the grocery store, which we all know is real, versus going to Never Never Land, as cliche as that may be. I now knew that it was a reality that I could accomplish something that would impact the world in a positive way. And my trip it also fostered a sense of my own shortcomings. I was put out there in this big world, and then I realized how much I don't understand. And I also realized that even if I were very wealthy at that time, I still wouldn't have had the slightest idea as to how I could help make things better. And I realized that I didn't actually have factual data to back up the belief that Africa has it so much worse than we have it here in America. My study abroad experience put into perspective for me how large the need is in areas of Africa and how similar those needs are here in America. The solution must be very sophisticated. And we know in our own systems, it can be rather tricky finding viable options that support individuals under the poverty level. From what little research I've done, it seems that the solutions that come from within a population and can be sustained by that same population are longer lasting and more stable. And our goal must be to work with and not for people. When I was younger, I used to just think I was going to give them everything they needed. And that's just that I realized on my trip, that's not how this is going to work. And so I believe that if we learn to work with each other, then both societies are benefited from that mutual that mutual working together. And I also think that there will be less misrepresentation and more honest problem solving. We really need to be honest when we're looking at these situations. Studying abroad trips for students are relative to growth and development because it challenges all that a student thinks they know about a culture that is different from their own. And another phenomenon occurs during student trips, and that is that students become related to the people in the community and vice versa. And I believe this to be key in creating viable long-term solutions for areas globally that are below the poverty line or that are not thriving. You know, and that's areas all over here in the US as well. Relatedness grows trust and understanding, which can help stave off paternalism and this idea that we have it better or we know better. And then when students come home to their own communities, they have a new perspective and see themselves as the ones who will have the responsibility to create solutions for local problems. I think that's what Socrates meant when he said, "Let him who would move the world first move himself." You know, why does any of this matter? I've always had a heart for serving in other countries, but I think that when I was young, it was misguided and came from, you know, the viewpoint that I said that I was better off than other people and that they needed my help. But the more that I traveled, the more that I became aware that what I have to offer is nothing more than what they have to offer me. And it is mutually beneficial and symbiotic in nature. When you serve others, they are serving you. And one other thing that I realized from my own personal travels is that, you know, if I think I'm thriving, but I know someone else is not, then how can I really be thriving? You know, I don't think we completely understand that yet, how connected we are as people, you know, as a species. I think we really need each other. And you know, imagine what the world would be like if we were if all of us were thriving and living out our dreams and being kind to everyone. I think it would be amazing. And so when I feel like I'm thriving, I want to make sure that I bring everyone along with me. You know, I don't want to go on ahead and call that success. If we don't all make it, then it's not successful. And as far as the theme of this year's symposium, Africa in Our Century, I think it's a very healthy place to start when looking for solutions. Is we need to ask ourselves, and we need to ask, you know, everyone involved, Africans and Americans, who they are and what they consider to be their personal struggles. And let's not assume that our generations in the past understood everything about Africa. You know, the stigmas must be broken. And I believe we can do that by finding ways to become related with each other. And then, you know, I believe until we set the stigmas aside and come to the proverbial round table together as a global mankind, then we won't be able to solve our complex problems. I think it's going to take all of us, and I think it should take all of us. As far as my ideas of what we can do to bring a greater awareness, I think that as far as students, if we're talking about the student body, I remember in my own experience, it seems a bit randomized on what communications from the school I actually happened to hear when I was a freshman. I'm a junior now, so I'm more conscientious about the importance of any communication I get from the school, but I remember being a freshman and just trying to survive. And so the best way to reach me at that stage in my education was to have someone come into the classroom during scheduled class time, and and talk about it for less than 5 minutes, even like a minute presentation. And then if they had a flyer, then I would remember to take action outside of the classroom. And I also think that students are concerned with how it could affect their other courses during their semesters, and they are also concerned with how they might be able to afford such a trip. And so I think if those two things are addressed, then there will be a larger peak in interest. Because honestly, I have not talked to really anybody who would say, no, I won't go on this trip if it's not, if the money is there and the time is there, why would I not go? So I think those are two of the main hurdles that students deal with in this area. But yes, that's all I have. I love Africa, and I'm thankful to be part of this, and I hope that was what you're looking for.
Thank you, Jamie. That was really nice. And I thank you so much for sharing all of the insights and experiences. We will, as I said at the beginning, have some time for questions after our next presentation, and we'll just kind of put the questions together. So if you have questions for Jamie, write them down and hold on. But thank you very much. So our next presenter then is Kansani Ngwenya. So I will turn it over to Kansani.
Thank you. My name is Kansani, like you said, Ngwenya, and I am from South Africa. And I think it's so interesting that we have an American who went to South Africa and a South African who came to America. It's just so crazy. And you kind of get to hear both sides, how it was going there and me coming here. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to come and speak on my experiences. My background history, I grew up in a village, but I later moved to the city. But even then, like coming to America is always like a dream, as you can imagine. It's something that can be done, but we're not always necessarily told that like you can do it. Like it's always like, oh, I'll go later in life and I'll do it whenever. But when the opportunity came for me to come and study here, I was like, oh my God, what? These opportunities exist, and I think, well, they should be put out more often out there so that people, kids, teenagers know that we can always travel to the US. My brief educational history, I did theater back home. I was a theater major, and when I came here, I switched to new media, which is mostly about social media, and I do enjoy both. I love both very much. The school I went to, my drama school, was held in the South African State Theatre. So it was a big theater space. We were in the studios every day, come in 9 a.m. The first thing you do is warm up because you're having dance next. And after dance, you have your drama class. After drama class, you have your music. That's the kind of school I went to. So when I came here, obviously things were switched up. I had to go to class, have to take assignments, and have to, do all this college stuff, exciting. And it was new to me, actually. This is like my first college experience in this way. And I always say that I feel like this was the worst mistake ever because I'm gonna have to go back to South Africa and they're gonna wonder how I, as a South African, I'm not used to the educational system there because I'm used to the one here. So coming to the US, it's not just coming to college, which I think was a misconception I had. I was like, oh, I'm just coming to study. And then you get here and it's a whole community. You need to be part of the community. You can't isolate yourself and be like, I just came here to study, and then you're done. Obviously, you're gonna make friends, and you're gonna have to learn the American way, even if you don't want to. I'm not saying I didn't want to, but you learn new things, you adapt to the changes, not only at school, but outside as well. So my educational experience has been pretty good. First of all, colleges, going to a college in South Africa is not always the best thing. Universities are better off. So that was another misconception I had to like clear away, that community colleges here are actually very good, and it's a very good opportunity that I'm very grateful for. I never feel like, being a South African, I'm always like, whenever I tell people, oh, I go to a college in the US, it's always like, oh, you go to a college? And I'm like, no, I go to a college in the US. It's totally different. Teachers are very attentive. There's a lot of resources at Sinclair, especially. There's tutoring, there's the library, like everyone is just so helpful being a foreign student. There's never the whole, oh, you can, like, they never ask questions like, why don't you know this? They just like take it in their stride, like, okay, she probably doesn't know it. Okay, maybe my accent gives me away, but you know, but they're very helpful, which has been like a very different experience, including classes. I am used to going to class like for the whole day. And here you literally have like just one class. You go to class, you do your work, and you're done. What else was different was that there's less of teaching, in a way that in South Africa, most of the time, teachers are the ones who have the textbook and not the students. So they have to teach what is in the textbook, you know? And here, you have your textbook, you have to, you know, go through the chapters yourself. And then when you get to class, you have all these discussions and stuff, which are so fun and which I do enjoy. It really helps you get an idea of what you're learning about. You're not just sitting and absorbing information, you are absorbing and you're speaking back into it, which actually helps retain the information longer. So adjusting to the US, first of all, I'm going to talk about the daytime savings. Well, that is crazy. And I just got to find out that we're going to have to go back to like the normal time again. I'm like, oh my God, my body has to wake up an hour earlier again. That's just crazy. Oh my God. But adjusting to the US, like I said, brings a shift to the mindset, which I think is where how big global education is. People think like you just, like I said, like you're just going to study, and that is not the case. You come here, you learn a different lifestyle, you see the world in a different way. You get exposed to things that you were not necessarily exposed to from your home country. And it was really exciting to hear Jamie, how she spoke, that like I always thought it was me being changed being in the US. I never considered that, oh, actually like an American citizen can go somewhere else and to Africa and be like, oh, this is different, you know? So there's always that, you see things in a different way, certain issues come, and also like certain things that you were not aware of happening back home. When you come here, you realize that, oh, this is not good, or this shouldn't be done. And well, I need to do more. You know, I've been sitting, I've just been taking it in stride because that is what you used to seeing. But when you're here and when you're looking at it from an outside point of view, you realize, oh, that's not good. How can I go about it? And I think that's when like volunteering and networking, which is something I had to learn here, you know, learning to know people. You are not an island. You're not going to make it alone. You're not going to make it by yourself. It's, yes, you can make change as a person, but you still need like a team behind you. You need a group of people to also support you in it. And I think that's when networking came in with the the program I'm in, Community College Initiative Program, it always encourages us to like make connections, you know, with your teachers, with your friends, with my host family, make connections. You are not just here to study because like Jamie said, you want to make a change. I also want to make a change. And sometimes I didn't know before coming here, what change did I want to make back home, you know? And coming here and learning all about this stuff, in how I took like global education was not only going to college, but also like being educated in so many things, educated in the ways of life, educated in the ways of how to go about life, actually. As you know, I'm gonna tell you now, I'm 22, and back home, the youth is not really, you know, out there. It's not always striving to make changes. Like we always wait till you're like a little bit older by coming here and seeing like so many young people make changes. I don't want to say it pressured me, but it also made me realize that like I don't have to wait till I'm older. I don't have to wait. I can start now. Starting now is how, you know, you get things going, so that when you're older, you pick up from somewhere. You're not just gonna like wake up one morning and be like, I feel like, you know what, today I'm gonna do this. You know, it has been a long time coming. And being a youth here is very different. I am so amazed at how you have all, like, for example, most of my classmates work, and it's something we don't do back home, you know? You don't study and work unless you kind of have to, unless you have to pay for stuff. But we always just so relaxed. I realized that like we are too relaxed. And here, you know, you have the youth working. And I know sometimes they are like working for their own, you know, having extra pocket money or stuff like that. But like, that's a good mindset to work for the things that you want instead of looking to someone else, which is also a great lesson to me. Like, girl, you gotta wake up. You can't depend on your parents forever, and you can't like wait till you feel like you have to have like a real job or something like that in order for you to, you know, be financially responsible. As well, coming here, I learned to be very independent, because back home we are very much a community, you know. Even if you're far, there's still always someone, you know, always someone who's gonna keep you in check, always someone who's gonna like, hey, I see you, I'm gonna tell your mom, you know. But here, you don't have anyone checking on you. You need to make those decisions yourself. And it's very important because, you know, it has allowed me to actually even think about becoming a global citizen. I never knew that sometimes when you're home and you want to travel, you're always a bit hesitant because you don't know how it's going to turn out. You're scared of the culture, or you're scared of just adapting or learning a new language or just learning a new way of living. But, you know, coming here and learning to be independent, I'm just here like, oh, okay, you know, I can actually do this. And I think education is a great bridge to that, to people moving from one place to another, because you kind of have a safe space coming into college. I know I'm coming into like a community as well. I get to have friends, and I get to see, it's easier to make friends than if I was just, you know, coming here alone and just moving to a new place. I get to learn about things. I get to learn about how America works. I get to learn about America, and which is important. You know, I keep telling people that had I come here not on college, like just me myself, I don't know, I would have like cried a lot of times. For example, you guys do not have guest attendants. Like, that's just crazy to me. I would have just been waiting inside my car, waiting for someone to pop up and come put gas into my, and saying gas, like we say petrol, like it's different, you know. But being in a space where I can learn such things at a good pace, not feeling like, hey, you have to do this, you have to learn, is very actually good. So as I say, like, it's this whole global education creates a totally different mindset, a shift in your mindset, and seeing the world in a different perspective, but like in a good space. I know school is hard, yes, but like it's, you know, when I do self-introspection and I'm like, this is a good opportunity. It's good that you're here at this point, being at school instead, you know, of just coming here being a tourist or having to work. How I think colleges can do better as a student is that lots of times I don't know how, I'm still not sure how the education system works here, but sometimes we'll have classes and like the professors will speak on something that might have been like done in high school, and we didn't have that education. So, and it's easy to, you know, make the assumption that we might know, but we actually don't. And, you know, being on the shy people side, it's kind of hard to just woke up and be like, hey, I didn't understand, you know. But I think being more aware that you have, to the professors, being more aware that you have students who necessarily don't know about stuff. For example, we don't know. I learned the First Amendment when I got here, and that's the only thing I know, you know? So some teachers have to continuously like say like, oh, this is, you know, this, don't just assume that we know. But I feel all in all, speaking for Sinclair, they have done a great job accommodating us and making sure that we feel comfortable. I know some of the students, some other international students have like a bit of a problem with English or completing things and stuff. Like they've had extended times with assignments. So that's very helpful as well, because like I said, you get to learn at a good pace, because we don't want to just come here to just cram stuff and go back home with nothing. We actually want to learn. The theme Africa in our century is one that I loved. I saw it and I was like, yes, because I feel like this gives us a space to talk about Africa, to change the narrative on Africa, and as Africans as well. You know, we all know there's always, I kind of have like whenever I meet people and I'm just like, oh, I'm from South Africa, you know, they always have that, oh, really? Oh, okay. And it's like, no, I know we do have those parts, but like not everyone is from those parts. And, you know, it's just changing the narrative and sparking new conversations that need to be had in this lifetime, because I feel like we also as Africans live under that assumption, like we live in that narrative. It also traps us because it's always like, oh, I can't even go because everyone's gonna think, oh, I'm from such and such a place. But like knowing that we are growing as a continent and as a people, it gives us like a clearer mindset to dream bigger, to be like, you know what, I actually want to go study in Germany, or I want to go to Paris. You know, it's easier for us to approach such conversations and such goals when we have when we change the narrative of what Africa is like, and also for people to stop thinking that Africa is like one big whole country. It is not. It's like different countries. It's within a country, it's different cultures. So, you know, bringing more awareness into that, which I think social media is doing a great job of that, is quite imperative. And that is my presentation for today.
Thank you so much. That was really great to hear your experiences. And you're right, like I hadn't quite realized we have two like mirroring perspectives here on South Africa, right? Intentional in part, I think. So yeah, that's great. Well, thank you both for those presentations. I think what we'll do just to start is to open this up to questions or commentary of your own. Let me remove this pin here so we can see everybody. If you have a question or comment, can you, I guess we have the raise hand function. Let's try to use that if possible. I think everybody should be able to do that. Or if you're more comfortable pasting a question in chat, you can do that, and I can read them out. All right, I see Daisha Williams.
Daisha.
Daisha. Go ahead,
Um,
Daisha.
My question was for Kinsani. Am I saying that right? I wanted to know, with the lack of knowledge about Africa in the United States, how has that transformed like your day-to-day interactions? Like what assumptions or maybe even stereotypes have you came in contact with, even just interacting with Black people? Because I know that's a different culture, so it might differ how they interact with you. And if that's like a little personal, you don't have to go too much into detail, but
No, it's okay. Thankfully, I haven't had like an extreme reaction for some reason, but what I have learned to do is to kind of mention it like in the middle of the conversation or towards the end of the conversation that I'm South African. And one major, like everyone will, like we will have a good conversation until I mention that part. And there's always like this reaction like, oh, you know, like you can speak good English, like you can, you know, that there's always that. They don't say it, but it's always just there, just briefly. And you know, sometimes the conversation kind of changes, which is like, you don't have to do that. Or some people assume that, like, I know I told one person I'm from South Africa, and they started telling me about Liberia, and I have no idea what is going on in Liberia. I was like, so they were asking me about libraries, and they were like, yeah, are there any libraries? And I was like, in my country, yeah. I don't know about other countries, you know, like it's not like we sit down at school and learn about the whole of Africa. And also I had one person tell me that they had to teach me how to live in the city. And I was like, girl, if I can use an iPhone, like, do you think I'm from somewhere with no signal and no, like, it's always that, like, we we are very much in a black. I always tell people like Dayton is all actually like almost kind of small compared to where I'm from. You know, it's not like this whole idea that we're not from good places. So that's always like the one thing people do.
thank you.
Other questions for the panelists? Good time for people to ask.
Chris, I'm trying to put on my hand, but I don't know the icon down here. So my
Okay, you have to
my-
hit reactions at the bottom, and then it'll give you the
okay,
option.
so my reputation of technology is very well known. So so I have a question. I mean, thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Kisani, for this very engaging presentation. I have just a question. It begins with a couple of comments for myself. When I come originally from Cameroon, when I came to the United States the first time, that's a long time ago, about 40 years ago, I came in through JFK, New York. When I went through the immigration, and as soon as I got through immigration and got out to the airport itself, I said to myself, man, if I have my return ticket, I will use it. And this was just unbelievable. It was a strange place. It was different. It was just so. Can you say, both of you, can you say a little bit about your immediate reactions? When you arrived in the United States, and Jamie, when you arrived in South Africa? You proceed, right?
Yeah.
Can you say that your immediate reaction? Yeah.
Okay. I guess I'll go first. My reaction, I didn't believe it for a while. Like, I think I spent like the first week here still being like, am I really here? Am I dreaming? You know? So, but after that, I did want to go home. I love it here. Like, it's great to be here, but like, it's just not home. It's not the same. If I could go home right now, I would, with no hesitation whatsoever.
I think I had a little bit of the opposite reaction where when I got to South Africa, like I said, it felt like home. So I felt welcomed, and it felt very peaceful. It was a great experience. I had a fantastic experience when I first arrived there. I mean, I guess I was older by then, so I didn't have as many, misguided ideas of what Africa was at that point. So maybe that's why. But yeah, I think I got into the airport and it was just like, it was warm. The weather was warm, and then everyone was smiling. Like, I feel like a lot of times here in America, we're so busy sometimes that we forget to engage with each other. And so that was something that I really valued in South Africa. Was most people would look you right in the eye and smile, even if they didn't know you. And that was amazing. So I felt welcomed, and I felt like I was at home.
Chris, can I have a follow-up very quickly to that?
Sure.
Okay, so it was kind of a two-part question, and really a follow-up in the sense that there are many people who believe that one of the ways to really understand your country well is to look at your country from outside. And so, Jamie, you were in South Africa. You looked at America from outside, from South Africa. And when you look at it from outside, it looks as if there are things you would like to do when you get back to your country, or there are things you would want to see your country be like, or some directions. Could be areas of more attention to social justice. It could be area of more attention to something, right? And so, Kisani, you've looked at South Africa now from outside. What kind of things come to your mind when you look at your both individual countries from outside? Did my question make sense?
Can Sonny or Jamie, either of you want to take on that?
It's kind of a loaded question. I'm trying to formulate my thought about that. I think that sometimes it's hard to put into words. You have many experiences, interactions when you're traveling abroad, and all of those little pieces add up to this sort of feeling, or this sort of idea that kind of reveals itself after all these interactions. So it's a little bit hard to kind of pull exactly what those main differences were. But I think for me, it was, I did see that we don't have as big of a it seems that here in America, mostly we don't have as big of a disparity between the classes. But I also feel like there was more of a genuine concern there was more a sense of community in Africa. And I feel like that sometimes is something that is lacking. It's hard to find organic community here in America. You sort of have to make it, and So I think the main thing for me was that I really valued just the way that Africans were human, just like genuine and caring and not so closed off and protective of, like not so guarded of their, of themselves. They were willing to share themselves with others. And I feel like that's something that we lack here in America. And so when I came back home, that was, that's not something I can change in the whole society. Our culture is, it is very, America is very independent. It's very focused on productivity, and those things create some divide, it kind of can isolate you in a way. So I can't change that whole cultural setup, but what I can do is in my own experiences, make sure that I'm engaged in my life with people in my life. Like, when students walk by, make sure I smile. When someone says something to me, be engaged, listen, understand them, share myself with them. And I think that's kind of what you were asking.
Yeah.
Just, I wish I could change. I wish I could change everything, but it's not possible. And also, if I did change everything, we would lose some valuable things that we do have in America. And so, but for my own experiences, I make sure to value people and practice. And that's something that I've practiced too. It's not something I'm perfect at, and I get in my own world and distracted by things. So it's just a practice to continually have my eyes up and be aware of who I'm speaking with, and who, we need each other. And that's something that I finally realized when I took the trip to Africa. We need each other, and we can deny it all we want, but we actually need each other to thrive and live and feel encouraged. And like, we're viable human beings. We need to be understood in other people, by other people, to feel like we're a human. And I want to give that to people. And that came from my experience with my travel abroad experience to Africa. So
Wonderful.
On my side, education was and is like the biggest, because not education necessarily, but also like resources. Like, it's so good to walk into a class and just have computers there and Wi-Fi. Like, I just think like, even if I didn't have like my own personal, laptop, I would still be able to get work done, like in the library and stuff. Sinclair even lends laptops. Like, I was like, wow, we don't have that. And I see how that has affected us. Also, what I also saw as gender roles, those are like kind of tough on us. But also it's kind of, I'm at cross ends, because I know it's a part of our culture, and I don't want to be like strip that away. But at the same time, I feel like women need to have more say, more positions in power. Like, we can't be counting the number of women who are doing things and shaking stuff. And also here, like, people do things. For example, no one just says, oh, I'm gonna help, and then they disappear and go off the grid. Like, they follow up and check up and do stuff. For example, the church I go to, they help at an elementary school. They provide food and they provide tutoring. Like, that's beautiful. We don't have that. Like, you go to church and someone says, oh, can you please help? And like, that's the end of it. And people do stuff here. Like, someone sees a problem and most of the time they do something about it, which is something that we don't have.
Okay.
So we have a question in the comments from Anna Marie Guerra. What would you say the most significant impact is from study abroad? One thing, 2 words. No, you can use more, but
A shift in mindset and change in perspective. That's for sure. Like, you cannot be the same again. You cannot go to some other place and be the same. So that has been like the most significant impact is just seeing how another world is and seeing your world, and you're like, oh, okay, I see it now. So it's definitely a shift in mindset and change in perspective.
I would have to agree. I mean, I think you said it perfectly well. It's almost like being a child again, and your culture is socializing you. Your parents, you go to a new country and it feels pretty much the same. That same experience of learning how to be a human and seeing a different way of being. And it's really refreshing. It's really refreshing.
So I have a question, and please keep posting questions and raising your hands if you do have a question. I'll throw one out there, and it connects to a comment that Jamie said at the end concerning the question of money and finances. I think all of us, maybe most of us, can agree, and based on these testimonies, certainly is clear that studying abroad, this kind of global experience is absolutely transformative and can really shape people in absolutely fundamental ways. How do we broaden the ability of everybody, every student, to be able to access this kind of experience? Because I think, as you point out, it's a financial issue. Like it is not cheap to get a flight. It's not cheap to pay for any of UD's study abroad programs. I know that very keenly, but same for almost any program, right? And not just the money, but the time, right? If you're working full time and trying to support yourself in school, how do you make that work? Or maybe the better question is, how do we as a community make it possible for those who don't have those resources? I don't expect you to have the answer, but maybe this is something that others might want to chime in on as well.
Hi, Christopher. I'll jump in on that just with a comment.
Sure, go for it. Yeah.
My name is Carla Guinea-Gundo. I'm the Director of Global Partnerships at Miami University, and I'll be speaking in the 3 o'clock session. And one of my roles here is working with students specifically on that. So in programs like the Gilman Scholarship for Pell Grant recipients, Boren Critical Language, Fulbright, programs like those. And I'll talk a little bit more about those at 3, but I wanted to address your question, in terms of putting the onus on us as institutions, because we are the ones saying how important it is for students to have these experiences. And so as institutions, we need to be making an investment in structures that make that more possible for students. Through partnerships, through innovative exchange models where, we're bringing students to our campus and sending ours there, which I think really helps build relationships. So I am always, wanting to think of ways that, we as faculty and administrators at institutions can put these structures in place that don't put all the burden on the students, because then it becomes, an issue of the haves and have-nots, which is exactly what we're trying to avoid. So just a few thoughts.
Thanks for that. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Other comments or questions? We have a comment in the chat from Derek. I really think it's important for trip leaders to help students learn how to talk about their study abroad experience in resume interviews, etc. I don't know if Kensani or Jamie want to respond, or I don't know if we have thoughts on that. I think that's an interesting point. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's something that should be done, because you do want to mention it, you know, when you have an interview and stuff, but like you also don't want to put it in a broad way. So just in a way that can be like straight to the point, like, oh, I did this and I did this, and this is how I came about. I would love that kind of training. I feel like sometimes I just talk and talk and talk, you know, and just to have a bit more of a structure of what to talk about and how to talk about it would be great.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I hadn't really thought about that until recently. My advisor was talking about how that my study abroad trip was something to put on my resume, and I I hadn't really thought about it until she advised that I do that. But it is something that sets you apart. It makes you different because of the transformation that does happen when you study abroad. You can't help but be transformed. So I think it's really important to learn how to talk about it, and in a way that communicates, you know, your before version and your after version and what you got from it. I think that's really a good point.
Okay. Other comments or questions?
Hey, Chris, can I just throw something on that too in
Sure.
terms of that? I think that's a really good point. I have seen many cases where people who engage in study abroad, you're right, do not think that is so important. But one of the things that study abroad tells prospective, I think, employees or prospective people in societies, the person's ability to be flexible, the person's ability to adjust to changing, especially the world we live in, right? It's a rapidly changing world, and someone who does study abroad has the ability to adjust to different realities, to different situations. And so it's a very powerful positive. Again, I mentioned this because I worked with a lot of students when we ran the Cameroon program, which we ran for over 20 years. And that was one of the key parts when I wrote letters of recommendations. And when the students came back to me, irrespective of where they're going, whether it's to medical school, whether it's grad school and all this, when the students came to me, they would tell me how that was so impactful in their interviews, the conversations. So to me, someone who does study abroad clearly immediately tells me that this person can adjust to different situations. And so I think it is really important. And I truly believe that that's part of the reason why universities and institutions encourage their students that you have to do this, because what it does is that it challenges you to think differently. It challenges you to look at things in a different perspective, which is a major plus in the 21st century. Okay.
Absolutely. Okay. Other questions for our participants here? Or alternatively, are there those of you in the audience with study abroad or global experiences of your own that you might want to speak to? Anything that resonates with what's been talked about here today?
Actually, I am an international student. I am
Okay.
least. Yeah, a lot of what they talked about resonates with me because I had a lot of similar experiences coming from my country to the United States. A lot of things what they talked about, like assimilating to the culture and getting to know how people live their lives. You know, like you don't. Everyone lives in their own bubble, and you don't really know how they live. Yeah, you only know what the media tells you until you go interact with them. Then you actually know how they live their lives. Movies and I don't know, media in general just doesn't do a good job at showing someone's culture. And yeah, I also traveled to Europe before, and the thing where everyone just looks at you and smiles. I think that's probably that happens a lot in Europe. Well, specifically the Germany and Netherlands, but I don't know about other places in Europe. But yeah, I think it's a really valuable experience to just travel, get to know other cultures and stuff.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's it's a powerful insight. Thank you.
I'd like to add on something.
Sure, go ahead, Consent.
So we talked recently with someone, and it's like they always prepare us for like the culture shock from like your place to this place, but no one prepares us for like the culture shock from here to back home, because like, it's almost a year now. I'm used to like the American way. Going back, it's just gonna be readjusting. So I don't know if Jamie, you had like the same experience with the whole readjusting to how you were before.
I did. I was sad for like a month afterwards. It was very hard. And I only had 3 weeks of a study abroad experience, so I couldn't imagine. It's going to be an adjustment, I'm sure. And you're right, no one really, I don't remember, well, maybe there was some advice on how to handle that. I can't remember for sure. It's been a while, but yeah, I was sad, and I felt like I didn't, I didn't want to be an American anymore, and all these horrible things. And it's just like, it finally leveled out. It's like, okay, it's good, we're good. But yeah, it took some time.
All right. Other questions or comments or reflections?
May I?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Faraha.
First of all, just loved listening to you both. My name is Faraha. For folks who don't know me, and Jamie, I was on the trip with her, so I got to see how she changed. And Kinsani is a student here, and she's constantly bringing me joy and knowledge and learning. So what a pleasure to see and hear both of you. My first time going to South Africa, I came home and had a very different view of race and racism, whether it was individual or structural racism. One of the things I noticed was kind of how parallel the histories of the United States and South Africa are. And at the same time, there were differences that kind of transformed how I understood, like I said, race and racism. And I'd love to hear from both of you. Did you have similar changes in how you thought about race or racism, or how you understood it? And I'm sure, of course, that's still ongoing, especially for Kinsani, you're still here. But do you have any thoughts about that?
Um, I think we had this conversation that like one thing about the US as a Black person is you feel the weight of being a Black person. I grew up in a place where it's just Black people. Once in a while, you see a white person. Some, I'm sure, can even turn 30 without ever seeing a white person. And we had the apartheid era, which was like segregation of the races. And as usual, the Black people were under a lot of situations, but we came out of that. And since then, I'm not saying I'm uncomfortable now, but like there's a caution and a timidness with the way I am here. I haven't had any like racist altercations, thank God. But it's always I always carry the weight of it could happen, you know, which is something I've never had to. And sometimes I wonder like, how will I react in that situation? Online you see it and you're furious but it has never happened to my face. And it's just weird. Like I've always been human. Like I've always just been Kansani, but like here you are Black. Like you are a Black girl, you're a Black female. That's the first thing I feel like people always like, you're a Black person. So it's not nice. It's not what I'm used to, but and I hope I never have to get used to it. But I'm very, very, very grateful that I have been here for so long, and everyone I have met has just been wonderful to me.
Oh, that is such a weighted topic. It just hurts. It hurts my heart so much. Yeah, it was interesting because you do notice a difference in that, and I don't really know that I don't think I can completely understand it because I am white. But being able to have the privilege of go to South Africa and experience the culture there, where people are just people and everyone shares themselves generously with everyone. It was very eye-opening when I came home to realize how much of a hold it still has in our society here in US. Is it just seems like it should be non-existent, and yet it still persists and remains. And so it was very eye-opening. It was one of the very hardest things of my experience, because I realized the isolation that it caused. Like I said earlier, America already has this dividing that happens because we're so independent. And then you add in this sort of prejudice that permeates everything. And it's a big deal with race, but it's also with classes here in America. And we deny it, but it's actually here, it's present. And so it was very eye-opening and very sad to come home. That was one of the main reasons I was very sad for that month. I came home and it's just so heavy. And it's heavy because it feels a bit impossible. And it's such a big monster that it's hard to understand what its weakness is, and how do we address this, and how do we solve this? How do we rise above it? And that's why I think it's going to take all of us coming together to be able to proceed forward. But yes, race was definitely, the study abroad trip changed my perspective on race here in America, the issues of racism here in America.
Others want to comment to that question or another question?
Speaking back on like someone who hasn't like grown up here, like a Black person, I honestly think like there's no way anyone can ever explain it to you. You have to be here to feel it, because I also noticed like you know, when you back home, we only got news of like major events that centered like Black people. But when you hear, it's like every day something new comes up, and it's just, it can get like overwhelming. It truly can. So I don't know about finding a way to just always give, I don't know, I don't want to say like some kind of support, but to just have people who are around. For example, I have like you, Furaha. I have someone I can talk to, you know, and who help me see things and understand things, but I can always just imagine someone who doesn't have anyone and be just getting like bombarded with all these things. It can get like very, very overwhelming.
Okay. We have another question in the comments. Maybe I'll read that from Anna Marie again. What is one way this symposium can influence a change? So it's a good question. What can we take away after this? Julius has got to be on the spot here since he's our principal leader here and organizer, but I think anybody can chime in.
Okay, maybe I start with a couple of things, right? One of the objectives of this symposium, and this is the 5th year of organizing the Global Voices Symposium, and this year in particular is Africa in our century. And it's very coincidental, and we did not plan it that way, that both speakers today have connections with Africa and now connections with America. And as both stated, that there is a lot of misinformation or miseducation about Africa and also about America in Africa. And so, and then we've had some people ask some questions or confirm some of what have been stated. That part of this is to both educate ourselves and to raise a sense of awareness that the world is a big place. Someone used the word bubble. Yes, we have to get out of the bubble. We have to get out of thinking about just what occurs within our country boundary or our state boundary or our national boundary. Especially with social media, the click of the mouse, right? Right now, you look at youth culture in different parts of the world, you are basically looking at the same thing. You look at, and many of the issues that concern many people, and some of the issues which are mission-driven at the University of Dayton. I've heard everyone talk about issues of social justice, issues of fairness, equity. Some of those basic things are universal. I think it's Churchill who said some of the most important things in life are expressed in simple words: fairness, justice, right? And equity. These things are universal. These things are not the monopoly of one area. And so by doing this symposium, focusing on Africa, we'll begin to realize that these things are also very applicable to Africa. These things are embedded in African culture. These things are embedded in the value system. So part of what we're trying to do is challenge ourselves. How do we think differently? Can we think differently? And so it becomes crucial in our understanding and our thinking. So basically, to an extent, that is what this symposium seeks to accomplish, right? To bring more awareness to these issues, to bring, to basically spread more awareness about the human situation, the human condition. So I'm going to leave it to others, Chris.
I like that. That's a very good summary. I don't know if I could say it much better. But yeah, it seems to me in this particular session, we can see some of the connections here. In both cases, one of the resonant themes is how much prior to going to the other country, the images and ideas we had were perhaps problematic, right? And it's only in that actual lived experience of the other place that those problems become clear. And I think that's very much at the kind of the hope of the symposium as a whole for me, right? That people realize that that you need, if you don't see that, that's something you should be aware of. And others want to take on that big, try to follow Julius on that. Yeah.
I think it's what Jonathan said in the group chat, like he sees things very differently. And I guess like that's the whole purpose, you know, to have these talks and like from the source as well, you know, and from people who have lived through it and seen and how they speak back on that, and you hearing that and how it impacts you and changes you and how you see things is how I think the symposium can help.
All right, wonderful. Yeah. We're still have a few minutes left here, but we are getting closer to the end of our time. I think we are scheduled to end at 11:45. Is that right? I think that's right. So any last, I guess, questions or comments before the end here? Don't feel shy, anybody. If you've been holding in the question for the last hour, now's your chance.
I have one more thing to add.
All right, thank you. Yeah, go for it.
I think it's really important to like interact with people from that culture. Like today, it's easy, go on the internet, try to look for someone from a certain country you don't know about if you want to learn about their culture. For me personally, I didn't, when I was a kid, like 13, 14, I didn't know how big racism was here in America until like I made a friend from America and he kept talking about it. I thought it was an issue from the past, but I was really surprised that, you know, he keeps talking about it, and didn't really hit me until I came here. And another thing I know a lot of people don't know is I'm not from Iraq, but it's a neighboring country. They all, whenever Iraq is brought up, they think of war, but they don't think about like the beautiful culture there. There is the Arbaeen Walk. Google it. People walk peacefully for thousands of miles, millions of people, and people give away free food on the road. And they also offer you place to stay free of charge, just because they're generous. So yeah, I would say if you can't go live or experience another culture by traveling, I would say you have the internet. Go make a friend, learn about their culture.
Thank you. Yeah, excellent advice. Others?
I was just going to say, that it's really moved by your cheering stories and when I came back from Chile, my goodness, 30 years ago, I mean, I was there for a semester, and like the United States didn't even seem real to me. It was just like, what is this? What am I in? So whatever you're feeling when you get back, write that down, because I wish I had written those things down and crystallized some of those feelings that I could look back at that later. I did journal in Chile. I was really glad that I did that writing there. So because we think a lot of times we're going to always remember these things, but writing it down, and it's just a way of helping form those thoughts. So with all my heart, I just keep doing what you're doing and keep writing and keep thinking and keep traveling. Thank you.
Good advice. Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else? No? Okay. Well, if not, I really want to thank our two panelists for the time they spent with us today and for their willingness to share their personal experiences. It's not always an easy thing to do in a public forum, and I'm really appreciative. And I also thank all of you who came and listened and participated. Thank you for being here. Thanks also to Julius, who organized this whole symposium. And one last plug for, again, the other sessions today. If you haven't already looked at the schedule, take a look at it. And if you can make time, please attend. With that, I guess I'll bring this to a close. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.